Today's part 2 of scaling a coaching service. I'm excited about this one because this one, we're going to talk about some combination of hiring. And hiring comes down to how to know not necessarily who to hire, but what tasks to hire for and how to kind of navigate that process as you begin to scale. And then, of course, selling and how to build your sales process. Because selling is largely about doing the unscalable things and following up. And then we're going to get into some things like handoffs and sales hands-off. But the first thing that I want to talk about is the biggest reservation or the biggest kickback that I get whenever I talk to people and I say, no, it's time for you to scale. Which basically means you need to stop doing everything yourself. You will be still very involved actively in the business, probably for a while, maybe forever. I mean, I'm not in my coaching businesses, but that's because I'm terrible at running businesses, but I'm good at owning them. But you probably will still be involved in the active day-to-day. And we'll talk about what tasks to give away and how to navigate that, because that's an individualistic thing. But the biggest question that I always get, because often one of the first steps, if not the first step, is to hire an assistant coach, somebody to do the coaching for you or to begin to hand off clients or shoulder some of the load that way. The biggest kickback that I always get is, but people are coming for me, right? I get all these referrals, or it's my content on social media, or it's whatever the reason is. There's this worry that if it's not you actually coaching the client, all of a sudden the clients are going to say, no, I'm not signing up. Or the existing clients that maybe you're handing off are going to say, yo, I'm bouncing. And so the first thing that I'll say to that is that straight up does not happen. Straight up does not happen. We have seen thousands of people go through this. That does not happen. And the reason that doesn't happen is because the misconception is that in your head, number one, you're probably not that fucking special. And that's a bit of a kick in the ego nuts. And that was a kick in my ego nuts as well when I realized that, because I used to think that about my business too. Hey, if I'm not the person writing all the articles, or if I'm not the person coaching the business or doing all the phone calls or whatever it is, they're coming for me, right? And then I stopped doing those things, and all of a sudden they kept coming. I was like, wait, why don't you care more?
It's like when I take vacation and don't have a stupid amount of messages. Like, I'm really excited. I don't have a lot of messages when I get back, but there's a little part of me that's like, oh, I wasn't as needed as I thought. That sucks. Maybe
I'm creating work for myself a lot of the time when I'm working. For sure. But the other part of it is when people are being referred to you, or when you're attracting people through content, through relationships, through offline or in-person networking, however you're gaining clients, they're coming to you because they trust you. And it's your responsibility then to respect that trust and to transfer that trust. Whether you're the one actually coaching that client or not, you are responsible for that client, but you don't have to be the one doing the work. They're coming to you because there is a transference of trust. And that's the biggest mindset shift that I want you to realize as you listen to this. Transference of trust. They trust you. They know. Everybody knows that they can just get a workout anywhere, that they can Google a workout. They hire a coach because they trust that that person is going to look after them or has some sort of unique knowledge or whatever, which is not true, but that's kind of why people hire coaches still. And so as the coach, you can't take that trust lightly. You need to make sure that that person is still taken care of. But you don't need to be the one doing the work. You need to be the one responsible for the work being done well. And when we talk about that with our online trainer mentorship students is when they really start to get it. I mean, also, it's kind of like magical the first time that this happens in the business, where you go from being, call it like a solopreneur, a solo coach doing everything, and then all of a sudden you have an assistant coach, you have somebody working with you, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't need to be the one doing that work, but I still got credit for the work and still got money for the work. So this is what all those people have been talking about all those years. Well, that's nice. That's nice, Ren. Ren, isn't that nice?
It's what insurance taught me, John.
Go on.
Oh, you wanted me to elaborate on a random statement I made on the podcast. Who'd have thunk it?
You should have given Ren the second cup of coffee.
Right. Me got no coffee. Me regular.
When did you just fall asleep mid-sentence?
Yeah.
It's what insurance taught me.
Dozed off there, John.
Ren, wake up. Talk to me about insurance.
I'm almost 50. It's the low T. But what I was going to say before John so rudely interrupted me in the 10-second pause that I had between two sentences was, insurance is a business that's built on you learning a skill and systematizing it, hopefully, and then being able to deliver the same quality through other people. And I ran two offices at one point, and what I learned is, well, holy shit, I don't have to get in this Dodge Shadow that squeaks when the engine revs too high and drive all over North Carolina to talk to people about insurance. I can teach other people how to do this. And people who were my clients, who I thought bought insurance because of how awesome I was when I came to their house the first time, they'll keep giving these other agents money and I get money through that. Well, this is remarkable. And also, this is really sad because I thought these people really liked me and that's why they took out insurance. Turns out they just want a quality service that pays their children and loved ones when they die. It was never about me. The horror, right? Because I was so special, John. Well, you know how special I am. You guys have met me. Yeah.
Sure. I've paid you lots of pennies over the years.
Right.
It was actually really, really sad a couple years ago when Canada stopped using the penny, because then I needed to pay you more than pennies because I couldn't pay you in pennies anymore because pennies didn't exist.
It seems like it's around the time I got fired, John.
It was a bullshit case of inflation is what it was. But what's a good way to say this? Society rewards ownership and accountability. If you are willing to take ownership and become accountable, you will get greater rewards. Society doesn't reward active work that well. You don't need to go very far beyond manual laborers and factory workers and blue-collar workers to notice that some of the hardest working people in a, call it, modern society are not the people who are being rewarded the most. It's the dude with his feet up on his desk. But the difference is that the dude with his feet up on his desk is the one willing to be accountable if shit hits the fan. Is the one willing to be accountable if something goes wrong, knowing that they're the last line of defense in order to fix it. I still remember Alex was working with us at the time. And this is, I think, when he was the program director for the Online Trainer Academy, a role that you took over when he went into more of kind of a research role for us. And he came to me one day. We were having a call, I think, at night, one of our Tuesday night calls. And we had a call at night, and I don't even remember what the problem was, but there was some problem that happened. Because if you own a business, problems happen. This is ownership, right? No matter how good you are, problems happen. In my dad's words, it's just one fucking thing after another. And
I love your dad.
He's good. Strike the iron when it's hot was another one of his, which I have taken. If something good is happening, don't sleep, man. Get as much out of it as you can. This is what you worked for. Right. But in this call that we had with Alex and I don't even remember what was going wrong, but something was going wrong that hadn't happened before. And Alex said, man, what should I do? And I just paused for a second on the phone. I'm like, I don't know. He goes, what do you mean you don't know? I'm like, I don't know what to do. I've never seen this before.
How dare you not have
He goes, so what do you do? I'm like, fuck around and find out. What do you mean? He goes, what? don't you have a process? I'm like, yeah, like I have a decision-making matrix. Like we've spoken about that. Like you understand that. But at the end of the day, I don't know what to do. But I've accepted that my role in this company, which is by, of course, now your role because you are the program director, right, is you are the last line of defense, right? It's your job to make a decision. That's what you signed up for. And that decision might not go well. You do the best that you can. But you have to understand that if you are wanting to scale a business beyond yourself, what you are signing up for is ownership and accountability. And that is what society is going to reward with more money. But with that comes more responsibility. With that comes the knowledge and the awareness that if something is going wrong, it's up to you ultimately to make a decision to fix it or just to take a responsibility. How many times have we said, Amber, and Len, you've noticed this a few times, in our groups, I'm really sorry that happened. I'm going to get more information. And, but I also understand that I've done wrong by you and I apologize. Now, notice that I didn't say we have done wrong. I'm taking responsibility. It's my business. I didn't even know that this existed before you complained that it broke. But as the owner of the company, it might not be my fault, but it's my problem. And that's what you have to respect. And that's what people are transferring to you. This is what I mean by this transference of trust. When somebody is referring a client to you or somebody or your existing client or your content or your network or whatever is saying, hey, Jimmy Jim Smith is the trainer for you because his name is so similar and easy to say and alliterates, except for the Smith part. It'd be better if it was Jimmy Jim Johnson, but it's Jimmy Jim Smith. He's the guy for you. What they're doing is they're transferring trust that you're going to take care and make sure that Jimmy Jim Johnson Smith is taken care of. That was offensive to the ears. What were you going to say, Ren?
It's just the Smith on the end that really jacked it up. But yeah,
too much caffeine. Well, it's hyphenated. It's hyphenated. Jimmy Jim Smith is actually polyamorous. He's from Southern California, and he doesn't believe that the woman should necessarily change the name. And so what he said to his wife, even though they're in an open relationship, of course, because they're polyamorous, is that what he said to her is that he will also take a hyphenated name. And so he'll take her name in addition to him taking her taking his name, of course. So that's why it's Jimmy Jim Smith Johnson.
Thinking liberal. Yeah.
What's so funny
there,
about this
completely
this running joke that we have, you keep adding things, and it sounds more and more like my older sister and her family. She's poly. They do the ice bath thing. Gluten intolerant, like all of this stuff, and so you keep adding shit, and I'm like, why are you talking about my sister, man?
What people don't understand about
this is awesome.
What people don't understand about polyamorous vegans who do jiu-jitsu and then recover in ice baths in Southern California that go to Burning Man is that it's one person. You can't do one of those things without doing all of those things. The Venn diagram is a single circle.
Oh my God.
That's what people don't understand about it, and that's what's so funny about it.
It's a single circle. That is awesome.
It's a single circle. There's no carryover.
It's a dot.
The only difference is that they do marathons. It's so bad.
That checks. That actually tracks.
I mean, there's this whole movement now amongst the creator economy, which we can add into the polyamorous vegan jiu-jitsu ice bath, where it call them creators as well. What they're also all about long distance running now. They say it takes them to a dark place. I think is the term that they use. I don't really understand what that means, and I try to not make sense of it. But that's cool, man. You run and like. Do other people. That's cool. What were we talking about, guys? Scaling. When did you have something to add?
if I did, I have to go back to 1985 to find it.
Too much goddamn caffeine. Okay.
Just continue.
So.
Oh my God. Too much.
So what are we talking about what are we talking about with the sales process then? So we talked about this idea of transference of trust. The other bit that I wanted to discuss on this episode is if you're looking to scale a coaching business, you need to take the sales aspect of it seriously. And that means a few things. Number one, that means that you need to actually kind of manage a lead list. And in addition, so that means that you need to follow up with people. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. But you need to be proactive and not assume that just because you did something interesting on the internet today, like people are going to respond. And you definitely, like if you're just a single coach who is reasonably good at networking or content or relationship building or have a good reputation amongst your individual community, whether that's online or offline, you can do well for yourself. You don't need to worry about this next bit. But if you want to scale, you can't build a business that's reliant on somebody else doing something that you didn't know about, i.e. in person, or on you saying something interesting on the internet today. And that's for a few reasons. Number one is you're not going to have the reliability of volume, which makes it very, very difficult. If you're going to have other people working for you, you need to make sure that they're busy. And it's very, very difficult to make sure that the people working for you, whether they're salespeople, whether they're administrative people, whether they're coaches, it's very, very difficult to make sure that they're busy ongoing and that your business is optimized and can continue to scale if you don't have some sort of reliability with your lead generation. And if you're just popping out content and hoping that something pops off one time that gets a lot of engagement that you can then follow up with, that might work every so often. And it might be enough to fill you up, but it's definitely not reliable and repeatable enough to ensure that the people who work with you are taken care of. And you have a responsibility if people work for you to keep them fed and to keep their families looked after. And that is a very important responsibility that if you decide to be the type of person that people work for, you cannot take lightly. So that means a few different things. The first is that the majority of people that you speak to about coaching or nutrition or habits, still, I don't really get habit coaching, like drink your water today. Like, I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. Habit coaching. The majority of people that I'm not saying habits aren't important. I'm just saying I don't really get the whole thing with habit coaching. Still, the majority of people that you speak to are not ready to start a program today. Mm-hmm. Now, they might, not now doesn't mean not ever. But most marketing that you're probably doing right now, if you're listening to this wondering, how do I scale, actually is only going to convert people that are mentally and fiscally and physically ready to begin a program today. Very few people are going to sign up for something and say, yeah, I'll start next month. They're like, no, I'll talk to you next month. In their head, they probably won't even say that to you. And so it's fine to have a good process in the sales and conversion process that's consultative, that's respectful, to convert people today. Very, very important. But if you don't have a really, really good nurture and follow-up system that's well organized, you're going to miss out on the vast majority of potential clients. And the beautiful thing is once you build a book of business, something that Ren can speak about from his insurance days, I'm sure. Once you build a book of business, you can begin to build reliability into your process. Because that book of business of people that you're following up with is something that you can tackle and something that you can engage with when you didn't have a piece of content that popped off, when you don't have a networking event that you're going to, when you don't have people that are sending you clients because they're referrals or whatever, because there's an inevitable ebb and flow with that kind of stuff. And so whenever you do anything where somebody comes to you and they don't buy, or you don't even get into a conversation about buying, we use spreadsheets, man. We've used a bunch of sales softwares, and to be honest, our sales team just didn't like it. So we use spreadsheets. But you put that person's name on the spreadsheet and you recap the conversation a little bit. So you say, I spoke to Jim Johnson Smith, and he said that he was struggling with his, he said that he used to be an athlete in university and he worked out afterwards and ate reasonably well. But then when he got married and he got his job and his kids, he found that he was snacking in the middle of the day and like not eating good things. And now he's got a bit of a belly on him, and he's 37 years old and he just kind of feels his body hurting. But he's got, he's an accountant and it's tax time. And so he can't start anything now, whatever it is. Right. But what you do then is you write down that stuff. And you do two things. You set a reminder for yourself to follow up with Jim Johnson Smith. I wish I made that shorter, Dave. This could be a long podcast.
And we started late on purpose.
But you set a reminder to touch base with this person if they give you some sort of a date or a timeline. If they don't, you can still set a reminder to follow up with them. But also, you kind of know what their pain points are because you've spoken to them. And so then a week afterwards or 2 weeks afterwards, you don't tell them that you're going to send them this at the beginning, but you say, hey, Jim, what's up? Hey, look, I actually just made this post or recorded this podcast or have this PDF, or somebody else sent me this article. It doesn't have to be anything you produced that I thought you'd really benefit from. I remember a conversation you talked about snacking in the middle of the day, and this is just a really good, piece of just some healthy snacks that you could bring with you. Thought I'd send it to you. Hope you're good. And you can just continue to follow up with people like this ongoing. A follow-up is not, hey, you ready yet to sign up? Hey, you ready yet to sign up? Hey, you ready yet to sign up? No, continue to send them resources. Be top of mind so that when they're ready to buy, you're the obvious choice. And then you always give them an invitation to ask you if they have any questions or anything like that. What were some of the things that you did following up, kind of monitoring and following up with book of business in your insurance days? Anything you remember?
Yeah, we actually had separate teams for this. So the way we did it at the office is we had a sales side and a customer service side. The customer service side just provided service. And we would tell them at any point in time, you can imagine you have one of those Sherlock Holmes hats on. The front side says service. And at any point in the conversation, when you get a leeway, feel free to switch that hat around to the sales side. We also had a call team to manage calls to follow up with customers on a regular basis, just to check in, just to explain policy, et cetera, et cetera. So the call team would set up a certain amount of leads, if you will, calls that allowed a service team to call upon the client. Yep. And that servicing either led to referrals in which new sales would go see, or to servicing, which would turn into sales. But it was rain, shine, sleet, snow, hell, high water. It didn't matter. We just followed through with the systematic process, no matter what was happening. And that kept us in a space where we always had someone to talk to. Yep. And like you said, those people that you've hired as secondary agents, they've got work to do. Because if they don't have work, you're a solopreneur.
Yeah, and so that brings up the conversation about hiring, about how you decide what to hire for. Some people, when they're in this game, find that they really like the sales bits. Some people, when they're in this game, find that they really like the coaching stuff and don't like the sales stuff. Most people I speak to don't like the conversations leading to the sales.
Right. And
I mean, that's a hard job, to be honest, whether it happens in person networking or whether it happens in like the DMs in Instagram. And so check in with yourself when you're thinking about hiring people. What I generally say to people is take stock of everything you're doing over the course of a day, or everything you think that you should be doing and maybe you're not doing. And monitor your energy, right? Where are you getting brain fog? What are you kind of looking forward to? What are you not looking forward to? What do you think that you should be doing but you're not doing, even though it's an easy job? And it'll become pretty clear pretty quick, I think, which ones you need to hire out. I think assistant coaches for the coaching side is pretty important regardless. Like, even if you're not tapped out, That's also going to be generally the easiest task to hire for, just because there's a lot of coaches who work in the fitness and health and nutrition industries that can't build a business if their life depended on it, but are good coaches. And so they're really happy to work for somebody else who can build a business. But for the most part, it's going to be help with, call it this like nurture and follow up system is going to be pretty early on. And so there are some jobs that are more skilled, like the actual conversations. But then, I mean, like Ren, we have, I don't know what you call them, virtual assistants, but they're not really. But their job is actually to monitor the spreadsheet of leads and keep tabs on it. And every day go in there and say, hey, here's the people you haven't followed up with in a bit. Here's, okay, today we're going to be sending out this book on, or this guide or this article on healthy snacking, on mobility, on hip stretches or whatever it is. Here's the 30 people that we're going to message with this thing. Like they'll go through the spreadsheet and they'll identify the people who should send it based off of people who maybe you haven't spoken to for a little bit or people who have that problem. And in some cases, they might be the ones actually sending the message. Like you build like a little, call it a script. I mean, all that you're doing is sending them something and dropping in and wishing them well. Mm-hmm. And then giving them an invitation to say, hey, just like, if you have a minute, just let me know if you got this. And then a lot of the time they'll respond, and then, they might be ready to have a conversation and a deeper conversation, or they might not. But oftentimes they will. And so we'll often use people to help with those types of tasks first, because those are the types of things that can take a lot of brain power away, but they're not like super highly skilled tasks. You could come and say, hey, I have this great article on low back. Can you give me 30 people to message it to? Okay, cool. Here's a message that you can send. Can you send this and personalize it to each person? They just have access to your social media or your email or whatever. And by the way, this is the same with an email list. This is the same whether you use Instagram, whether you just like have people who you've emailed or have been referred to you who haven't signed up. You send them a one-on-one email. Just follow up. This is what I'm doing to build relationships with my book. It's one-on-one every single day. Not a lot of people, but the amount of people adds up over time. And so that's one of the first tasks, because then all that they do is they kind of just lob these people up to you into call it a consultative sales conversation. And then you might find that you want to bring on a salesperson. Or you might find that you love the sales. You might find that you want to bring on an assistant coach. Over time, depending on how much you scale, you're probably going to bring on all these things. But generally, what we find is the nurture and the follow-up is the largest low-hanging fruit that gets ignored, that has the biggest area of opportunity that you can hire out with the modicum of good systems relatively easily. And you would be surprised at, these are people who, even if they didn't engage with your content, like, what do we keep saying, right? It's the what's the line that we use? It's the lurkers, not the likers. Yeah, it's the lurkers, not the likers who buy. A lot of the time, these people say, yeah, I see your content all the time. I really like it. I like what you're doing. Or, yeah, I spoke to Bill Johnson the other day, and him and my wife are getting together now because he's open as well, and so he was talking about starting a program, and he said that he came across your stuff as well. Oh, it's a whole community in Southern California.
That's what he was talking about.
Yeah. So funny, man.
I'm sure that's what the discussion was, John.
That's what they talk about.
As he laid with another man's wife.
Yeah. When they're drinking.
How you doing on fitness?
How you doing on fitness? When they're sipping their
you kind of need to be fit, my man.
Right,
when they're sipping their yerba mate tea, vaping. That's what they're talking about.
Sweet Lord.
There's a couple new ones, Amber.
Yeah.
The
Those also fit.
polyamorous vegan jiu-jitsu fighting, ice bath, yerba mate drinking, vaping association from Southern California. Going to Burning Man. Sorry, go on, Amber.
It's all good. It's all good. I forget what the stat is, but like like the vast majority of sales happen after like the 9th follow-up or something like that. And now that was like specifically a sales industry stat, but I think that still applies here.
It's more than that. It used to be 6 before in like the advertising industry, it was kind of known that it was 6, but that was in like the 90s. I have seen more recent numbers with social media, with everything. Nothing's reliable, but most people consider it to be somewhere around 40 to 60 touch bases. So they need to see your name like 40 to 60 times. And that's not necessarily like manual follow-ups, but something like 40 to 60 times. I mean, that was actually what led to us building Quick Coach, Amber. I was like, okay, well, our longevity in this thing, where we help trainers, where we help people improve their careers, is going to be largely dependent on us staying relevant and people seeing us over and over and over again, so that when they're ready to buy, we're the obvious choice for them to help them with their careers. And so how can we do this? Well, I can't depend on content because I just don't trust the social media companies. I don't trust the algorithms. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I can't rely on that. If that's working, great, but I can't rely on it. It's outrageously expensive to purchase that many impressions. And so what can we do? Well, what if we shift our budget to building a tool that people are going to use every day? Then we get those impressions. Even if they don't see my name, they're kind of thinking about our company because they're logging in every day to work with their client. That was like what led to that. Now people who use Quick Coach is like thousands of impressions. So how can you kind of replicate that? Getting out in the community for sure. Becoming famous to the family for sure. But it's getting harder and harder. There's no question. Yeah, there's no question. But the follow-up is everything. Like we follow up with people who applied to the online trainer mentorship from 2020. We still follow up with them. And they're still booking in for calls. 4 years later. Yeah, I think I'm finally ready. 4 years later. That's how these businesses get built. That's how scale happens. Scale can't happen if you need to do something on any given day that's going to somehow manufacture brand new leads that you have to convert relatively quickly. It just doesn't work that way. That's how you can build a business as a solopreneur, for sure. But that's not how you scale. I mean, I think that's good. Anything else to add?
I had nothing.
I think it's a good
But I had no
place
coffee.
to stop.
I had way too much coffee.
Also, I don't drink coffee.
Yeah, it's you and your like gluten-free waffles and plain tea,
Yeah.
That tea is delicious, damn it.
You were complaining last time. Well, thank you for listening to this 2-part series. I hope it gave you a little bit more of an idea of what it takes to scale a coaching service. Obviously, we didn't get into the super nitty-gritty of it because, past kind of what I spoke about on this podcast, it is an individualistic thing where which steps you decide to take will change depending on what you're good at, what you enjoy doing. Are you going to increasingly try to become famous to the family offline, local marketing, whatever? Is this something that you're going to try to do with content and something like DM conversations? There's a lot of in between, and there might be a better, there might be a worse, but I can tell you that they're all good enough. And so it's a matter of deciding which is right for you and going all in on that thing and building up your systems with that thing. And it's kind of the same with hiring. You're not just going to hire somebody full time and be like, do work in coaching. No, what you do is you understand that there are these different pillars to the business that you're running, and you are great at some of them, and you're going to keep your hand on some of them. The process actually that my dad showed me was to map out all the different tasks of a company, basically all of the different jobs of a company. So build almost like a tree, like an employee tree, and fill in who's doing that job. And at the beginning, it's going to be you in every single block. But at least now you know what the blocks are, and you can look at some blocks and be like, yo, I ain't doing that shit. Or what's probably happening is, I know I should be doing that and I'm not doing it. And so you can look at those blocks and say, okay, this is the first one I'm handing off. This is the second one I'm handing off. And you can start to build out the system systematically for one of two of those things at a time. And that might be something like an assistant coach, where it's maybe higher skill, or it might be something that it's maybe lower skill labor, like monitoring a spreadsheet and basically doing the manual work of sending one-on-one messages based off of a script that you write, sending, nurturing, follow-up. But that's a very individualistic task. And so the specific steps in that change. But now at least you know what those are. I mean, as always, if you want us to help you with this, like the online trainer mentorship, go to Instagram, send me a message, says mentor, and we'll talk to you about it. But now at least you know what those steps are. And I hope that we have, I don't know, and Amber demystified kind of what goes into this and what goes into the steps of scaling this beyond kind of a solopreneur venture. And there's nothing wrong with running it as a solopreneur venture. But if you do want to scale, then you will get greater rewards. Society rewards ownership. Society rewards accountability. Society rewards the people who create the jobs and looks after the families of other people. That's how our system was built. Some people decide that that's right for them. Some people don't. And I think both are totally reasonable. With that having been said, I'm going to recommend another episode for you to pop onto right now. So scroll back just a little bit to episode 186. This episode is called Help Everyone Without Going Broke. A lot of coaches are very, very good people who have really, really good intentions, and that leads them to make bad business decisions, and it tends to bring them to bad business models because they're just trying to help everybody, or they just want to make a difference. And I think that's great. But the best way to help the most amount of people and make the biggest impact is actually to choose a good business model. And so that's episode 186. We talk about that. We talk about the best business model to be able to help the most amount of people, and also like making a lot of money for yourself too. And so episode 186, check that out. Hope you're good. And as always, rate and review this podcast, or I'm giving away a copy of my book, The Wealthy Fit Pro's Guide to Getting Clients and Referrals. If you rate and or review this podcast on Spotify, ideally, the way to do that is give us a 5-star rating, take a screenshot, email that screenshot to obviouschoicepod@gmail.com. All of this is in the description of the episode as well. And really, really appreciate it too. Thanks so much. Talk soon.